When my best friend and I went to the mountains for 3 days, the first thing we did was this. Section 1 of the getaway begins. Rekindled sparks and hidden longing. Word count, 900. The first thing Sam did when we arrived at the cabin was take off his shirt. "I need this trip," he muttered, stretching his arms above his head. His toned back caught the golden spill of the late afternoon sun, muscles flexing under skin still tanned from summer. 3 days of silence, whiskey, and no drama. I forced a laugh, tossing our duffel bags inside the rustic wood-frame doorway. "We'll see how long that lasts." Sam was my best friend. Had been for 8 years. College roommates turned hiking partners, poker night buddies, and the kind of friends who didn't need to say much to understand each other. And yet, I had spent far too much of our friendship pretending I wasn't in love with him. I had a boyfriend, Marcus. We'd been together for 4 years, lived in the same apartment, shared rent, routines, silence. Lately, especially the silence. It had grown into something colder than distance. Something that looked like indifference. Sam, on the other hand, was newly single. His last girlfriend, some fit yoga influencer named Leah, had packed up and flown to Bali without a goodbye. He didn't talk about it much, but I knew it had torn something loose in him. When he called me last week and said, "Let's get out of here. Just you and me," I didn't hesitate. The cabin was nestled high in the Appalachians. Secluded, quiet, surrounded by pines that swallowed cell signal. No one knew exactly where we were, not even Marcus. I told him we were taking a friends-only trip, no big deal. He said, sure, without looking up from his phone. That first night, Sam built a fire in the stone hearth while I cooked pasta. The flickering light played across his face, softening his jaw, catching in his lashes. He hadn't shaved in days, and his stubble made him look older, more tired. But still beautiful. "Can't remember the last time I felt this far from everything," he said, sipping from his whiskey glass. "Maybe I'll stay." "Abandon your entire life to live in a cabin with me?" I teased, ladling sauce onto our plates. He shrugged. "Could be worse." Dinner was slow, quiet, intimate in a way that felt dangerous. We didn't talk about relationships. We didn't talk about what was broken. We talked about the stars, the weight of time, how neither of us really felt like we were where we were supposed to be. Later, we moved to the hot tub on the back deck. It sat steaming beneath a canopy of dark sky. Steam clung to our skin as we slipped into the warmth. The cold air bit at our faces, but the water was perfect. Sam leaned his head back and exhaled. "Man, this is what I needed." I nodded, too aware of how close we were. Our knees brushed under the water. He didn't move away. Neither did I. "You ever think about just running away?" he asked after a long silence. "All the time." He glanced at me, a little too long, a little too open. "With anyone in particular?" That question. It hovered between us, alive and electric. I could have lied. I could have laughed it off. But instead I said, yeah. But I probably shouldn't say who. His mouth twitched, something between a smirk and a challenge. "We're drunk in the woods, man. No one's here to judge." He shifted, and suddenly his leg was pressed fully against mine. Underwater, it felt like fire. My heart thudded. "You've always known, haven't you?" Sam didn't flinch. "Known what?" "That I'm into you." He didn't answer at first. Just watched the steam rise between us. Then, quietly, yeah. Silence. He ran a hand through his wet hair. But I didn't want to ruin what we had. My throat felt tight. "You think I didn't want more?" "I think you've got a boyfriend," he said flatly. "And you've got a closet you never really left." His eyes locked onto mine, something flaring behind them. Anger? Fear? Desire? We didn't kiss. We didn't touch any more than we already were. But something snapped taut between us in that moment, something fragile, dangerous, and inevitable. Later that night, we sat on the floor by the dying fire. He fell asleep there, head leaned back against the couch, mouth slightly parted. I watched him for what felt like hours. I didn't know if it was love or lust or loneliness. But I knew I wanted him. And that was the first time I admitted it to myself without shame. When I finally crawled into bed alone, the sheets felt too cold. I lay awake, staring at the wooden ceiling, listening to the mountain silence wrap around the cabin like a secret. Sam had known. He always had. And now there was no turning back. Sam didn't say much the next morning. He stood in the kitchen in just his joggers, pouring coffee, eyes fixed on the window like it held answers to questions neither of us had asked. I sat at the edge of the couch, cradling my own mug, trying not to replay the hot tub scene in my mind, but failing. I hadn't touched him. He hadn't kissed me. But something had cracked. The thing we never talked about was no longer silent. "You sleep okay?" I asked. Sam shrugged. Woke up cold. I wanted to tell him I was cold too. That the bed felt wrong without him in it. That I kept thinking about the way his leg pressed into mine underwater, how he looked at me like I was a risk he didn't want to take, but almost did. Instead, I said nothing. We went hiking that day, a short trail behind the cabin that looped around the ridge. Trees creaked in the wind. Frost clung to the leaves. Sam walked ahead of me, his shoulders tight, head down. I watched the back of his neck, the curve of muscle under his hoodie. All I wanted was to close the distance. All I could do was follow. We reached the overlook and sat on a bench carved from an old log. The view stretched for miles. Layered hills like ripples in a quilt. "You ever regret not acting on something?" I asked. He didn't turn. "Sometimes it's easier not to. That doesn't mean it's right." He sighed, a sound full of weight. "You've got Marcus." I exhaled slowly. "Marcus hasn't really looked at me in months. Not like he used to. Not like you did last night." Sam's jaw tensed. He didn't respond. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, letting the cold air bite at my face. "Do you ever think maybe we're pretending our lives are fine because it's easier than admitting they're not?" I asked. He stood up suddenly. "Let's head back." We didn't talk on the walk home. I didn't push. I'd said too much already. That evening, Sam built another fire. I poured us both whiskey, handing him a glass without a word. We sat on opposite sides of the hearth, the crackling logs the only sound in the room. Shadows danced on the walls, wrapping the cabin in flickering warmth. Sam stared into the flames. "I've been with women my whole life," he said quietly. "Told myself that was just the way it was." I looked at him. "And now?" He glanced at me, eyes heavy with uncertainty. "Now I don't know if I've just been scared shitless of what it would mean to want something else." My pulse thudded. "Do you want me, Sam?" His jaw clenched. "You're in a relationship. Are you really going to hide behind that?" He set his glass down and stood. I rose too, heart pounding. We were suddenly face to face, inches apart. The air between us was thick with tension, unsaid things pressing at the edges. "I can't stop thinking about you," I whispered. "I don't know if it's right, but I know it's real." His eyes searched mine. "If we do this, there's no taking it back." "I don't want to take it back." That was the moment. The moment the line blurred into nothing. He leaned in slowly, testing, hesitating. And when our lips met, it wasn't soft. It wasn't delicate. It was hungry. Starved. Years of denial crashing into heat. We stumbled backward toward the couch. Hands in hair, mouths desperate. His fingers slid under my shirt, finding skin. I moaned into his mouth as he pushed me down, climbing over me like he'd been waiting to do this for years. Clothes disappeared, piece by piece. Skin met skin. His mouth was everywhere, throat, chest, stomach. He was careful, but urgent. Shaky hands that didn't quite know what they were doing but wanted to learn every inch of me. When he finally entered me, it was slow. Intimate. His breath on my neck. My legs wrapped around him. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. It wasn't just sex. It was confession. Release. Wreckage. Afterward, he lay beside me on the floor, chest heaving, eyes unfocused. This changes everything, he said. I know. He sat up, pulling on his boxers, suddenly distant. We shouldn't have done that. I felt the sting of his words, even though I knew he didn't mean them. You kissed me, I said quietly. I know. He rubbed his face. I need to think. He walked to the bedroom and shut the door behind him. I lay there, naked under a blanket, heart pounding, unsure if I felt more alive than I had in years, or completely destroyed. The fire hissed behind me. The room felt cold again. I reached for my phone out of instinct, but stopped. There was a message from Marcus I hadn't opened yet. Instead, I turned the screen over and stared at the ceiling. Sam had made his move. And so had I. What we'd started couldn't be undone. But what came next? I didn't have the answer. Not yet. The next morning, Sam avoided my eyes. He was already dressed when I came out of the bedroom, mug in hand, pacing on the deck in the cold mountain air. Shirtless, his broad back tense, his breath visible in the chill. He looked like a man trapped in his own skin. I stepped out quietly, clutching my coffee like it might steady me. You okay? Sam didn't turn. Yeah. Just trying to breathe. We didn't mention last night. Not directly. It sat between us like smoke, thick and suffocating, curling into every word we didn't say. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen, I said. He finally turned, his expression unreadable. I'm not pretending. I'm trying to make sense of it. I nodded. So am I. I'm not that guy, he added, voice lower now. I don't cheat. I don't fuck my best friend when he's taken. But you did. I met his eyes. And so did I. His jaw clenched. So what, now we just become those people? I walked closer. I don't think it's about becoming anything. I think it's about admitting what we already are. Sam didn't answer. His silence said more than words could. We spent the rest of the morning apart. He took the trail alone. I stayed in, made eggs I didn't eat, stared at the phone I refused to unlock. Marcus had texted again. You okay? Haven't heard from you. I typed, yeah, just hiking. No signal, and hit send. Lie number 1. When Sam returned hours later, snow was beginning to fall, light and slow, dusting the wooden porch and the tops of the pine trees. He was red-cheeked from wind and silence. I thought about leaving, he said as he took off his boots. I would have let you, I replied. He glanced at me, something bitter behind his eyes. Would you have stopped me? I don't know. We didn't speak for a long time after that. That night we drank too much. The whiskey lowered his guard. Or maybe it just gave him permission to stop pretending. I've thought about you more times than I'll ever admit, he confessed, sprawled on the couch. Back in college. After Leah left. Hell, even before that. My throat tightened. Then why did you always act like I was the only one feeling something? Because if I gave it space, I wouldn't have been able to stop. His voice was raw. Honest. I moved to sit beside him, our thighs brushing. You didn't stop. He didn't pull away. I wanted you that night, he said. In the hot tub. I wanted you when we were 19 and you wore that stupid band tee to class and didn't even notice the way I looked at you. I leaned into him. Tell me this isn't just confusion. It's not. He kissed me again. Slower this time. Not frantic. Not a mistake. This was us choosing it. We undressed each other without words, moving to the floor again, closer to the fire. My hands traced his spine. His mouth tasted like ash and whiskey. We were less afraid now, but still aching. He took his time, exploring me with careful desperation, like he wanted to memorize every reaction. And afterward, when our breathing slowed, he whispered into the crook of my neck, "This should feel worse than it does." "It will," I replied. But it didn't, not yet. The guilt was still distant, still hypothetical. What I felt in that moment wasn't shame. It was clarity. But clarity has a price. The next morning, I opened my phone again. Marcus had sent a voice message. I didn't listen. I deleted it. Lie number 2. I felt Sam watching me from the table. Everything okay? Yeah, I lied. It's nothing. He nodded, but his eyes lingered. He knew. He just wasn't ready to say it. We were slipping into something dangerous, and we weren't fighting it anymore. That afternoon, we didn't hike. We didn't do much of anything. Just drifted around the cabin, brushing past each other like magnets too tired to resist. We cooked together, silent, choreographed, domestic in a way that felt terrifyingly natural. I could get used to this, I said. Sam looked up, startled. You mean the cabin or… I mean you. Us. He didn't answer. Just handed me the pepper and moved on. The unspoken thing was this. We weren't just cheating on other people. We were cheating on the versions of ourselves we'd worked so hard to maintain. The honest ones. The loyal ones. The ones who didn't lie to boyfriends or ignore feelings for years or fuck their best friend in a cabin miles from reality. And yet, here we were. That night we didn't sleep together. Not because we didn't want to. Because we wanted to too much. We needed a pause. But the silence between us wasn't absence, it was tension. Suspended and waiting. I lay awake in bed, listening to him breathe in the next room. I wondered if I was still in love with Marcus, or just afraid of being alone. I wondered if Sam was ever going to stop running from himself. I wondered if what we had now was too fragile to live beyond these woods. The snow fell harder. I closed my eyes, and for the first time, I dreamt of both men at once. On the last morning, the snow had stopped. Everything outside the cabin was white, still, untouched. Sam was already packing when I woke. The energy between us had shifted again. Less heat now, more weight. The kind that settles in your spine and makes it hard to breathe. No coffee today? I asked, trying to sound casual. He shook his head. Figured we'd grab some on the drive back. He didn't look at me when he said it. I sat at the edge of the bed, watching him fold his flannel shirt, then unfold it and fold it again. Like he needed to keep his hands busy or he'd unravel completely. I'm not expecting anything, I said quietly. I know. I'm not asking you to fix what we broke. He turned then, eyes dark, tired. What did we break? I hesitated. Maybe everything. Maybe nothing. The silence between us was louder than any argument could have been. The drive down the mountain was quiet. We didn't play music. We didn't joke. Every mile felt like peeling off a layer of safety, of secrecy. The real world was waiting at the bottom, claws out. Halfway down, Sam finally spoke. Have you told him? No. He nodded once, like he expected that. Are you going to? I don't know yet. He drummed his fingers against the steering wheel. You should. I stared out the window. I'm scared to. You weren't scared to fuck me. The words hit like a slap. I didn't respond. He glanced at me, jaw tight. Sorry. That was… No. It's fair. We stopped at a gas station. I went inside alone. Bought coffee, stood in the fluorescent glow, staring at my reflection in the glass door of the cooler. I looked the same, but everything inside had changed. On the way back to the car, I checked my phone. One new voicemail from Marcus. I didn't listen to it. I just watched the seconds tick on the screen before hitting delete. Lie number 3. When we got to Sam's place, he turned off the engine but didn't get out. Neither did I. So, he said. So. I don't regret it, he said after a beat. I regret the way it happened. The context. But not the fact that it did. My chest tightened. Same. He leaned back in the seat, exhaling hard. I don't know what this means. For me. For us. You don't have to know. But I want to. We sat there in silence again, the air thick with what we hadn't said. I've loved you for a long time, I admitted. Longer than I should have. Sam turned to me, and for the first time in days, his face softened. I think I always loved you too. I just didn't know it was love. Or maybe I was too afraid to call it that. I reached for his hand. He let me take it. But love isn't supposed to feel like this, right? he said. No, I replied. But sometimes it does. He squeezed once, then let go. I need time, he said. I understand. I got out of the car. He didn't. I stood on the sidewalk, watching him drive away. The apartment was quiet when I got home. Marcus wasn't there. I dropped my bag, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the framed photo on the nightstand. Us at a beach years ago, smiling like people who believed everything good would last. It felt like someone else's life. When he finally walked in that evening, he paused in the doorway, looked at me like he already knew. You're back, he said. I'm back. He set his keys down and leaned against the kitchen counter. Did something happen? I nodded. Yeah. He didn't speak. I slept with Sam, I said. No soft landing. No detours. Just truth, finally. His face didn't change much. Just a slow blink. A quiet inhale. How long? Just once. Well, twice. He laughed then, a hollow, painful sound. Wow. I'm sorry, I said. I should have told you before. I should have told you how distant I felt. How lonely. Marcus walked to the living room and sat down. I followed. I think we both knew, he said. We just didn't want to say it out loud. I didn't plan it. But you didn't stop it. No. Silence stretched between us like a canyon. So what now? He asked. I looked at him, really looked. The man I'd shared years with. Comfort, routine, safety. I think this is the part where we stop pretending we're still right for each other. He nodded slowly. Yeah. I think it is. Sam didn't text that night. I didn't expect him to. Some love stories aren't clean. They don't wrap in ribbons or tie themselves into happy endings. Some are messy. Some leave bruises. Some begin right where they should end. I walked onto the balcony and looked out at the city lights, phone in hand, thumb hovering over Sam's name. Then I put the phone down. Let him breathe. Let myself figure out what kind of man I wanted to be, now that I'd seen what I was capable of. Sometimes love is quiet. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes, if you're lucky, it comes back. But tonight, it was just me. And that had to be enough.